In this video, we'll be discussing some recent updates and massive upgrades to large language AI models. Stick around to the end to receive a free 7-day trial of one of our trading robots, which uses AI to complement its trading decisions. So, the reason why I wanted to make this video today is a couple days ago, on December 5th, 2024, OpenAI released a new, very sophisticated large language model, the O1 model. And really why this is so interesting for trading is it's kind of showing the advent of a new breed of LLMs. And Claude did something similar with the Sonnet 3.5 model recently. But effectively, this whole new generation of models are getting a lot better at reasoning. So the initial or early LLMs were almost described as like parrots to a certain extent. They would just repeat readily available information to you in a well summarized manner. But now we're seeing that this new generation of large language models are learning to reason. And why this is so key is it's making them a lot better at certain areas which directly relate to trading and might actually have a pretty fundamental impact on trading going forward. So in this presentation, I wanted to discuss some of the changes which we've seen in these new models, and then discuss the implications to trading, and then look at a few next steps if you would be interested in testing this, as well as what I'm planning to do to start to test this for our trading robots. So first we can kind of start off with the status quo. So machine learning and artificial intelligence is already extremely useful for trading, but at the current moment, simple models tend to outperform when predicting price movements. So I have an example of a decision tree classifier to the right, and a decision tree classifier is effectively a very simple machine learning model which mimics how traders naturally make decisions anyway, by effectively creating automatic decision trees to predict if something will go up or down in the case of a classifier, or to predict the next value in the case of a regressor. So decision trees, a classic application for trading, and how I like to use them is you can feed a bunch of technical indicators to one, and then the decision tree will effectively be able to be trained on these indicators and help a trading robot and be used as an additional filter to make it significantly more accurate. LLMs to date have not typically been able to outperform decision trees just because they're made for very, very general applications and they're able to regurgitate basic technical analysis. But when it comes to actually making a prediction, it has not been the right tool for the job yet. That being said, there's been a lot of talk about the use of reinforcement learning for trading. And reinforcement learning essentially allows an agent to learn from its mistakes and essentially get better at performing a particular task. This would be like a self-driving car. And I'm sure it doesn't take too much of a stretch to think that this could have potentially enormous applications for trading. And because we're seeing that this new generation of LLMs is starting to learn this type of system, potentially they'll be able to overtake a lot of the more simplistic models which work super well today when it comes to actually predicting price. And currently these models are still very new and the cost is still quite high, but as the cost of tokens starts to decrease, perhaps we'll be able to see it become more and more widespread in the Forex expert advisor industry. So we can talk about the O1 update a bit more in detail. So the biggest change here is they've now started integrating reinforcement learning to handle complex reasoning tasks. And specifically what OpenAI is discussing is like chain of thought. So effectively, the model will almost think about the answer before it gives it to you. And what it's able to do, and this kind of little diagram to the right explains how reinforcement learning works, is it's able to recognize and learn from its mistakes. And how reinforcement learning typically works is you have an agent, which is some sort of like computer object, and you would give it like various reward functions, and it would learn from those reward functions and seek to essentially maximize its reward. And in doing so, it trains itself in a particular environment to be able to accomplish a task. And a great example here would be self-driving cars. So in this O1 update, this particular type of technology has been applied to like the new OpenAI model, which is a significant advancement over the previous versions of ChatGPT. And we can see some of the actual impacts here in terms of the performance. Really, this was done to make it a lot better at more complex reasoning tasks, and specifically in both coding and mathematical reasoning. So here, if we look at this chart, we can see the performance of previous OpenAI models in terms of this is a coding competition by the International Information Olympiad, I think, or International Olympiad of Information. Big coding competition. And what we can see is that the current model of ChatGPT, or I suppose the slightly outdated model of ChatGPT by now, placed in the 11th percentile of all competitors. So it was essentially a pretty mediocre programmer. And what I've seen using ChatGPT as a coding assistant, this would be consistent with that. Like, yes, it can generate code, but its code is pretty buggy, and it's not necessarily the world's greatest coder. Whereas under this new O1 model, the one which was trained specifically for this competition, placed in the 93rd percentile. So that's taking us from a pretty terrible programmer to an extremely good programmer. And this has enormous applications for trading, even if it just enables us to be able to automate our strategies significantly faster. And it can potentially open the door for a lot more people to enter the automated trading world. So enormous applications for trading and for software development as a whole. But what I found was extremely interesting is the improvements to analytical capability analysis, and specifically these two here of data analysis and mathematical calculation. And specifically, like the fact that it's now able to significantly be quite accurate in terms of data analysis is huge, because trading is ultimately a game of probabilities, and being able to understand nonlinear probabilistic relationships. Like, classic example, if the RSI is above 70, there is a slight edge in the fact that something is perhaps overbought, therefore it can go down in a mean reversion strategy. And a lot of very simplistic models don't know how to think in a probabilistic manner, which is how humans trade. But I'm thinking that with this new type of reinforcement learning and the clear advancements in data analysis and mathematical calculation, this type of non-linear, like statistical way of thinking might be able to be introduced in the new models, which is extremely exciting. And really, to speak a bit more concretely on the applications for trading, like the first one is this will enormously speed up the programming of strategies. So if you actually have something which is a really good coding assistant, it will make us all significantly faster at coding. Second of all, in terms of the generation of ideas and optimizations, being able to have a smart optimization engine, which is not just like a brute force backtester which is super likely to overfit, would also be a really interesting potential combination. Another big area here is generating ideas. So being able to think of different premises for trading and being able to feed you a constant string of new ideas for your pipeline, which you're able to expand upon, is another enormous potential application. And finally, the most complex one would be the use as a machine learning filter. And this would specifically be if you feed it essentially a trade and you were to ask the model, hey, does this actually work? Is this going to give us an edge? Like, is this trade likely to happen? And that's something which to date LLMs aren't great at, but through the use of reinforcement learning, this might almost be the turning point, which is quite exciting. In terms of next steps, like what exactly I would want to test out, and if you're interested in testing out these models, what I would also encourage you to look at is if you're more of an expert advisor, MQL5 coder, it's not possible to run web requests in the MT5 backtester due to security concerns. However, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to feed historical trades to the API via Python backtest. So what I would personally do is effectively connect via to their APIs, and then through Python, like give it different examples of a certain scenario. Like, hey, here's a trade which occurred on the 6th of July, 2022. The last 10 candles had these open, high, low, close values, and the RSIs had X variables X values at this time. Do you think it's more likely that the security price went up or down? Give me an answer. And effectively, you could then consistently, for a bunch of different trades which it took historically, feed those variables to the model, and the model could give you an answer, be it buy or sell. And using that, you would be able to then essentially backtest the accuracy of the new models to actually predict whether or not something is going to go up or down. So pretty much use the exact same approach which you would use to test the decision tree classifier or random forest classifier, but instead of like calling a model on a data frame directly in Python or locally, instead for each trade, for each row of a data frame, send the data to the API and get the model's, essentially the result that's coming back from the model, and then just append it to a data frame. That's what I personally would do looking to test this, but to each their own, and if you have different experiences, please let me know. I'd also be quite curious to analyze the math behind it. The reason why I love decision trees is that it's very straightforward to break down the math that's going on behind it, and you can even do it manually. Whereas these large language models are significantly more complex. But before trading with anything, it's good to kind of understand what it's actually doing. You don't want to have a pure black box model. So being able to really break down and get as much information as possible, which OpenAI typically doesn't like to share, but perhaps some of their competitors will, to be able to kind of see what's happening. So lots of really interesting applications here, but I think these are a few avenues which I'm looking to test, and I will update you guys in the coming weeks in terms of what happens there. And before we leave, I just wanted to show you guys this quick live track record of our Golden Missile system. Missile is actually an AI-enabled expert advisor, and it uses random forest classifiers along with a really strong technical analysis strategy. And what you can see is that we're having like phenomenal returns, and it's really an excellent bot. And right now we're actually offering a 7-day free trial of the Golden Missile, which I'll link in the description, and I'd encourage you guys to check it out. So yes, please check out Missile and have a great day.